It's been over half a year since economy experts have been taking a look at RuneScape and old school RuneScape, and while old school RuneScape has seen some changes, RuneScape 3 or modern RuneScape has seen none. In this video I'd like to highlight some major issues with our current economy and form of trading and how it could be improved. Whenever you're ready, grab your cup of tea, sit back, relax and enjoy. The simple reason as to why I'm making this video is because Jagex needs to step up and actually fix something for once instead of blaming it on technical issues or it being too complex. I would hate to see this problem continue to be avoided for as long as dev costs have been an issue, as in my eyes, this is a far worse problem even though it might not seem that way for every single player. While dev costs may suck, some players don't care about them, or they say they don't affect them, or they don't PVM at all, but buying and selling items on the Grand Exchange is something every normal main account does very often. It is after all an MMO, and trading is simply part of the game, and if that system that is currently in place isn't good enough, that's a major issue. The Grand Exchange, being RuneScape's trading house or market, is an easy way for players to buy and sell their goods to other players, as they can simply chuck in what they want to sell for whatever price they wish and try to sell it. If there's a buy offer with the same or higher amount of money active, you'll be able to sell your item instantly. One key difference between this and another marketplace in other MMOs is that you have no idea what the actual price of an item is other than the Grand Exchange value of said item. Now this Grand Exchange price is an indication of what an item is worth, but I'll get to that in just a second, as that's another problem with the current system. The only way to find out what the actual street price is, or what players are willing to sell or buy an item for, is by selling that item at a lower price or buying it at a higher price. This is known as instant buys or instant sells in RuneScape. Now for high volume items, you can just do that because you have thousands of them anyway, but for low volume items, that isn't really an option unless you have tons of them, in which case you're probably merching or flipping them. By the way, finding out the accurate price or the street price of an item is actually how flippers make their money. Now the Grand Exchange price for high volume items is fairly accurate, and you'll be able to buy these items usually for just 5% more or less depending on what the current demand is and supply. The problem lies in items that are low volume and the Grand Exchange price simply updates too slowly, or items are simply not manually updated despite their price being 10,000 times higher than their Grand Exchange value, leaving some players, and I've seen it in my comment section, completely confused as to why they can't buy an item for 50% more than the Grand Exchange price. The worst offenders are usually items added through new updates that simply aren't updated manually to something at least remotely close to their street price. Take for example the fractured staff of Arsenal pieces added in July 2021, which are at 8 mil, 6 mil and 7.3 mil, despite these pieces costing over 1 billion GP each, and really in reality much more. Another really good example are Crippling armor pieces, of which the repaired version, which you can actually sell and are tradable, are already inaccurate compared to their actual street price, but the incomplete versions of these drops are even more cheap and completely off from their actual street price. It just doesn't make any sense as to why these haven't been manually updated after so many months. It's unacceptable because players that don't know anything about the economy or just don't know what their actual value is are easily scammed by players that do know how much they're worth. And the other way around, items that are completely overvalued, again usually things added with new updates, like tokens through treasure hunter events. I remember a lot of people complaining in my comment section about them not being able to sell some of those Christmas tokens, which are valued at like 20 to 30 mil, even though the actual street price of those items was like 500k. You know, obviously no one is going to buy them from you for 20 to 30 mil. If you were to actually see what the street price was or recent trades on the Grand Exchange, these players, even though they don't know anything about the item, would know what it's approximately worth, and they would be able to actually sell them. Overvalued tokens are a really common form of scamming as well, as players that don't know what their actual worth is will think that they're getting double their money for, let's say, their Noxious Staff, while in reality they're getting 8 tokens worth 500k each. How are accurate G prices or being able to see what an item is worth not important enough to allocate resources to? Because the excuse I keep hearing on live streams, and sure, I don't know what's going on inside the company, is that they're taking a look at it and, you know, they're working on it.
It's just that we have to find the technical time to set aside for it, and it's significantly more complex than it sounds.
Manually updating the price of some items, like the FSOA pieces, that really can't be that hard now, can it? Like, fixing the Grand Exchange will definitely take some time, and I don't expect that to be done in 1 month, but, you know, changing some prices manually, that really shouldn't take that long, and it's honestly shameful that such a large company isn't willing to change something as simple as that. Now, because you're not able to accurately see the street price or actual sales of certain low volume items, mainly being PVM gear or expensive skilling things, players started creating price checking bots, like for example SootyBot. Now, with these bots you can record things you buy or sell by using screenshots, and these bots are able to give you a general idea of what the actual street price of an item is, which is very, very useful for many players. Now, with something as simple as just taking a screenshot, players are easily able to manipulate using this bot, and it's definitely something you can see when using the bot sometimes, as prices of weapons can fluctuate hundreds of millions within a few hours with no logical explanation. But that's mainly items above max cash. For the majority of items below max cash, I'd say it's a reasonable indication of what the actual street price is, and that's why the bots are so useful, despite you having to take every single price with a grain of salt. Regardless, being able to see recent transactions is still a useful guideline when selling or buying your items you want, especially since the G price is usually going to be wrong anyway. Now, another major problem is items going beyond max cash, like I just briefly mentioned. After an item goes beyond max cash, which is over 2,147 mil approximately, you're no longer able to buy the item in full on the Grand Exchange. This means that item is now prone to manipulation, and basically players go back to the Stone Age, being buying and selling an item manually by spamming whatever you're selling or buying in the Grand Exchange, which really isn't too fun as it costs a lot of time, and people really just will stick to a certain price, making buying or selling an item absolutely awful because you cannot see, again, there's no transparency, there's lots of uncertainty, you cannot see what the real price of the item is other than recent price checks on bots like SootyBot. And since you only have to send in a screenshot with the time and date, you can easily fake your sale for, let's say, 300 mil than the previous trade, and go into the Grand Exchange and say, yeah, no, look at the recent trades, I want this amount of money, and there's nothing you can do about it because, well, there's not going to be that many sellers of that item. So you're going to have to buy it from them or find someone else, which, you won't be able to buy off the Grand Exchange because it's beyond max cash. Now, sure, for some weapons you can buy the parts, but since they're in such low volume and people are buying them up themselves to make a profit, the entire situation is just awful. The more and more players use a third-party source or program like SootyBot, the more it's seen as like the normal or the guideline, and then other players don't want to sell that item for lower than the most recent trade either, and it's awful. Now, I don't personally own discontinued rares, but it's interesting to look at them as they've been above max cash for quite some time now. I recently made a Reddit post covering most of the discontinued rares and how much their price has increased the past 2 years. The average price increase for discontinued rares, using the forums as a source, I'm not saying that's the one and only place to check prices, I don't know, like I said, I don't own rares, but it's a pretty popular place to check the prices. From April 2020 to April 2021, the rare price increase on average was 383%. The year after that, the average increase was around 280%. If we compare the prices from 2 years ago in April of 2020 to the prices now, at least what I could find from those forums, most of the items 10x'd in price. And people say that's due to inflation, but that's obviously not true. An item doesn't increase 1,000% because of inflation and a couple of players wanting more party ads. Now, I was actually trying to find some information about inflation by asking Jmods, but I've not really received replies as to what the current situation of the game is. But I do know that back in 2016 we got data from ModPorky, not ModPorky, but ModPorky about inflation from 2014 to 2016. And in that chart it showed that we were actually in a period of deflation and then had a relatively stable economy according to his charts. You can see that by looking at the consumer price index, so the blue line in the top. In this next chart you can see the volume of items being bought or sold, where the more red it is, the more of it is being bought, and the more blue it is, the more of it is being sold. With those charts being shown, it is worth pointing out that the Jmods did say this.
No, and it's important to say, this is why it ends up being a complex piece, because there are a million different views you can take of it, and it doesn't mean, just looking at that and saying, okay, well, no problem then, that's fine, that wouldn't be the case.
Yeah.
But it's a really useful kind of top-level view.
Apparently Motimbo is working on this, and I'm trying to get some information from him through a different Jmod, as I'm not able to directly contact him. Anyways, back to the rares we go. This is clearly someone owning a lot of the party hat stock and simply manipulating the price over a long period of time. Sometimes the jumps in price are just unexplainable. How do you explain a price range of 200 to 325 billion GP on a blue party hat? That's a range of 125 bill, or the equivalent of a max price per party hat, according to this post. Now, the post you're seeing on screen is only from a few days ago, and I posted this to Reddit just yesterday, and in the comments people told me that the 260 bill I took as an average from this post was inaccurate, as the blue party hat was closer to 350 bill. How can an item so expensive have such a large range in prices people are paying for them, and he's saying they are worth? 350 bills, the equivalent of 7,000 bonds, being near 40,000 euros if you were to buy bonds to get this item, which is obviously ridiculous. Now, why am I mentioning all these items beyond max cash? Well, because they have the exact same problem items below max cash have when traded in low volumes. There is no transparency as to all of the trades going on, and there's lots of uncertainty as to what the real price is, and the only indication you can get is from large groups of players, either discords, clans, forums, or price checking bots, telling you that's the accurate price, and basically saying, source, trust me bro, because if they're similar to recent trades within our group, which could absolutely be controlled by a group of players, it's legit. Like, there's absolutely no way of knowing you just got scammed or got a good deal other than comparing yourself to screenshots of other recent sales, which could easily be manipulated. I'm not saying they are, or the specific screenshots I'm showing are forms of manipulation. I'm saying the possibility is always there because there's no transparency. Jagex needs to fix this by giving players that transparency. They can do this by making the GE price update more regularly, and if required, actually update prices a week after release if they are sold for prices way beyond the GE price. They also need to show the most recent trades of that item on the Grand Exchange, maybe the most recent 10 trades or 20 trades depending on the volume of said item. There also needs to be a second currency and not just a storage of wealth like spirit shards that can actually be used on the Grand Exchange, despite the Jmod saying that this is going to be very difficult to implement. Implementing something like this will allow players to buy things above max cash without needing to actually trade players. And I do believe that items above max cash need to be auctioned instead of automatically bought or sold. This means that players would have to actively manually buy or sell items at prices they deem fit, like other MMOs do it. So you would actually see a list of buy or sell offers of, let's say, party hats. While changing the way items are traded and the economy might take a lot of technical time, it is time to take the first step, as this is hurting the game and all players engaged in trading both on and off the Grand Exchange. Players shouldn't need to rely on third-party software or other player groups, which are both easily prone to manipulation. It's time Jagex made a change. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video and found it interesting. Be sure to leave your thoughts on this issue as a whole down in the comments below. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace.